Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Sheriff Richard Mack is with me. We're having a great time on your radio and TV. We're talking to the folks morelikeuss.org. Yeah, why college campuses need to correct misperceptions. They need to learn to communicate memorative skills. They need to learn to unlock large-scale change, to not label, to not fight, to learn to get along in ways that are productive and solutions-oriented. It starts with understanding our supreme law of the land. It starts with understanding that, hey, you know what? I might not agree with what you say, but I do agree you have the right to say or think it, ladies and gentlemen. They spread memorable, repeatable content on college campuses, and their goal is to motivate civil discourse. James Cohen with us. He's the executive director. We've also got Anne Schockett with us. She's the co-chair of the organization. And we're talking about so many different aspects of this. I mentioned that I have been relentlessly attacked for trying to create civil dialogue. Some people just don't want civil dialogue, folks. And so one of the keys, James, I want to ask you this. One of the keys is to really kind of say, hey, sometimes if people aren't willing to do so in a civil way, maybe we just let them go and work with other people and show them how it's done. What do you say?
Yeah, we talk about averages. So, right, there are going to be some people who will be unwilling to listen, but by and large, most people will be. And, unfortunately, the people who tend to have the most extreme views, who are the most stuck in their beliefs, are also the people who are most commonly online. So there's sometimes this conflation where it's like, oh, these people on social media are so bad, everyone can't talk to each other. No, this subset of people that are actually quite small who scream online, maybe they're not great to talk to, but that is a distortion. The vast majority of people do not post endless political things and get into all sorts of political arguments online, but right, we don't really see them. They're just like sitting in their living rooms or doing whatever, that is not political fighting. So yeah, there will be some people who might be very difficult to talk to, but by and large, people will probably enjoy or have, better conversations than they expect with the majority of people.
I think one of the ways is just to move ahead with a coalition of people that are willing to talk, and maybe at some point they come to the table. That's our hope and our prayer. Sheriff Mack, you were on a show yesterday and heard some pretty interesting things from the host. Let's focus on that for a quick second.
Well, it not just centered on Kagan and Barrett from the Supreme Court meeting before Congress to request more money, especially for security, but that it seemed that Amy Coney Barrett was actually admitting that it affected her decision making. The threats that she and her family have been getting actually affected her decision making, and that she may have changed her position to make sure that the threats were not carried out. And it was obvious that she was afraid of the threats and that they affected her. And the host that I was with actually went so far as to say she obviously has a hard time making her decisions underneath the threats that have been levied against her and her family.
And this has got to stop.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it does. But she also needs to understand that's been happening for decades. Sure. To the Supreme Court justices, and that if she can't stand the heat, she needs to get out of the kitchen. And I actually believe that President Trump needs to ask her to leave and say, look, you're gonna have a good retirement. We'll take care of you and your family financially, but I need to ask you to resign so that we can get somebody in there that will actually have the courage to stand and maybe not have such a large family that is hard to keep safe.
Yeah, Anne Schockett's a woman. Let's see what Anne has to say about this. Amy Barrett basically changing some of her positions maybe because of threats. What do you say, Anne?
Well, unfortunately, this has been the atmosphere and the landscape right now. And many, many wonderfully talented, brilliant people who should be going into public service are not doing that because of threats and because of their fear for their family, their loved ones. This is a very, very, very big thing. What should be done, in my estimation, is to talk about how to handle these situations, not to say, well, it's time for me to leave, let the next person handle the situation. It's time for us to stand up and say, this is what's happening, this is what needs to be done. It's occurring all too often, and we just heard about what happened with Amy Coney Barrett. But basically, this is happening at all levels of government. I've been involved on the local, state, and also national levels. So I see this, I hear this, and especially, Sam, from women who don't like the dirty word too often of politics. And if we look at it less as politics and more as public service, I think we will be able to deal with those situations and be there to support each other.
I like to say there's no such thing as politics or political issues. There's only moral issues, Anne.
I like that. I agree with that. Absolutely. And that's why I became involved with the National Federation of Republican Women and had the honor of moving up and becoming its president, because too often women do shy away, as well as many very, very talented men shy away from serving their local, state, and national governments because of the fear, and it's not just by women, of the fear of being harangued, of being mocked, of being actually going through what Amy Coney Barrett obviously has said that she's gone through recently, because we serve a higher mission when we do serve in public service.
Amen to that. All right, Sheriff Mack, you always ask people the same questions, and it's turning into a massive, awesome survey is what it's turning into, right?
Yeah, we don't have very long, but real quickly, I want to hear from both of you, and you go first on this one. Give a grade to President Trump for his first 18 months in office.
Would you please repeat that, Sheriff? I just
give President Trump a grade for his first 18 months in office.
Right.
I certainly support our president. Absolutely. And we have to give him the time to actually be able to complete his mission. Sometimes, people are very, very quick, Sam and Sheriff, and as well as James, to jump to conclusions. We live in a world where every single minute we are privy to what's happening all over the world. We are not privy, unfortunately, to what's happening as people are planning their goals and their missions. Okay, we are not there in the private rooms, and so basically, I am in support of the president.
Understand?
Okay.
What grade would you give him? Would you give him a grade?
Yeah, I would give him a 9 out of 10, because nobody is perfect, Sam.
So 90%, would that be an A minus or a B plus?
A minus.
Okay, James.
Yeah, so I'm going to take a very intriguing approach to this question. All right, so More Like Us does not cover this, and so I'm not actually going to answer the question, sorry. But what I will say is that we don't deal with all issues in higher ed. And so in higher ed, there's an issue of grade inflation. And so when it comes to higher ed, Trump is probably going to get an A.
Okay, and then one other thing real quick. I know we're coming to a break. Real quick. What is the absolute worst thing going on in America today? What's the number one thing we need to solve right now, James?
Yeah, well, so, these distortions, right? This is the core of More Like Us, right? Thinking about those across the political spectrum in these overly negative light, right? It's incorrect and it's destructive in all sorts of ways.
And
it is suffocating not only the students on college campuses, and it's also suffocating our younger folk. I mean, this is taking place throughout elementary school, middle, and high school. There's an uneasiness. It's very, very different from when I grew up. That's for sure.
Sheriff?
Thanks. Very well. Very, very well done. Thanks so much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is important to really focus on. These people are making a difference. That's what I like about some of these organizations we're interviewing nowadays with Braver Angels and morelikeus.org, because they're really focusing on digging in to get the research. Where do we really stand and why? And then how do we share that with people so they kind of, their perceptions and reality are a lot more aligned. And then we say, okay, now that everybody's not a hater, everybody's not an enemy, that's just been somehow magnified by the media or social media or sometimes examples of college campuses that they highlight in the media. But really, people are willing to settle down and be friends and talk. We'll talk about that more with James and Anne, right? James Cohen, Anne Schockett. They're with morelikeus.org. Right now, we'll let Richard Mack fly. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sam.
All right, there he goes, ladies and gentlemen. CSPOA.org. That's the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. When we come back, though, James and Ann continue on Liberty.
This is a
Roundtable
battle.
Live.
A battle between truth and deceit. A battle between forces that would enslave this country in darkness and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in fact.
TheEpochTimes.com.
Every day, Americans are told to hate each other while the people in power keep winning. But what if there's another path? What if Americans could come together and take this country back peacefully before it's too late? The Democrat murder of America, demagoguery in the first degree, exposes the corruption, manipulation, government failures, and political games pushing Americans further apart while our country slips deeper into crisis. Inside, you'll discover powerful insights into political hypocrisy, media bias, government overreach, the national debt crisis, and the growing culture of division destroying trust in America. More importantly, this book offers a call for peaceful action, accountability, unity, and restoring the values that once made this nation strong. If you're frustrated with the direction of this country and looking for answers outside the mainstream narrative, this book was written for you. Join fellow Americans who still believe this nation is worth fighting for. Available now at murderofamerica.com.
Sheriff Mack, standing tall, still answering freedom's call, a badge of promise, a
We have the
constitutional
Sheriff Mack music. I don't have that every day on my show, but we have it on Tuesdays because Sheriff Mack joins me. And there for a time, we had the Sheriff Mack show on Tuesdays with me. And so we play this music to promote what he's doing. He's trying to bring people together in meaningful ways as well. But we're talking to James Cohen, Executive Director, and Anne Schockett, co-chair of morelikeus.org. More Like Us doing a phenomenal job on college campuses, bringing research to the table. And James, I want to start with you. There's a big difference between what people think reality is, so their perceptions, and then what reality really is. And we need to really teach people to focus on memorable, repeatable skills so they can understand how to communicate in ways that are effective. I think that's part of the problem right now. We resort to name calling, we resort to attacks, or I'm right, you're wrong, or, always and never, things that just trigger and marginalize. And we need to learn to communicate in memorable, productive ways and develop that skill set. And that's what you guys teach, right?
But yeah, so that's one of the things, right? So correct misperceptions. And then we actually put skill building as a type of misperception, in the sense that often there's a sense that you need to learn so many skills and it's so difficult. And right, I guess to get, we just before the break we're talking about grades, right? If you want to get an A or A+, then sure, it's going to take quite a bit of time. But you want to just, kind of get through a conversation reasonably, just having a few things in mind. A stop, drop, and roll type approach can be very helpful. And so, yes, I'm a huge fan of mnemonics and alliteration and easy ways to remember things. And our mnemonic at the moment is run. It's like running toward a conversation rather than away from it, or how to have a conversation run smoothly. And what run stands for is showing you're receptive, finding what unites, and using narratives. So receptive unites narrative, and we could unpack that, but it's really showing.
And the reason for narrative is because that personalizes the discussion. When you start to talk about a narrative, pretty soon you start to tell stories to one another. And when people hear stories and hear about your life and who you are, pretty soon it's easy to become personally involved in a way that, James is a nice guy. I thought James, well, you know what? and it changes the conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we have more mnemonics. There's a mnemonic called CAST. So, right, there's often a sense of how to humanize people, but humanization is sort of this kind of vague term. So, CAST is showing people as more complex, admirable, similar, and worthy of togetherness than often believed. And right, stories tend to bring these out, showing what unites and that there are similarities, makes people seem less scary, and showing that people are receptive. So right, I mean, because to know that like you're open to hearing from them and change your mind based on what they're saying, and that that this is actually a dialogue, not just like two people standing on soapboxes like talking past each other.
Her name is Anne Schockett, but she's not all about a shock jock. She's actually trying to bring people together in a very peaceful way. I find that interesting. Speaking of, terms and acronyms, and Anne, I want to know what you think about this, and then I want you to kind of parlay that into what you think the future looks like for morelikeus.org.
Oh, absolutely. First of all, aren't we so lucky to be living in a nation that's still a shining light on the hill? Yes, nobody, as I said before, nobody or nothing is always perfect, but we're still an example of how freedom does work, and that basically we also are a beacon of hope. And as for, I can take the example of practicing the piano. When people take up an instrument, they have to do their scales over and over and over again until it becomes a part of them, until it becomes the way their fingers move, the way their head thinks. It's the same way in civility. If you keep on practicing saying thank you, excuse me, you're welcome, and the basic tenets of how to converse with other people, after a while, that becomes commonplace. And so basically what we're doing is we're taking certain concepts of, being able to approach other people, speak with other people, not just on college campuses, but in everyday life, and be able to take those basic concepts and be able to use them. Then you can basically have a conversation with just about everyone, unless a particular person has his or her ears totally closed. And what we're finding is that most people don't. Most people are curious about how other people think, especially when they go to learn on campuses of higher education learning. They're there to explore avenues. They're there to be to learn new concepts, new ideas. And so why not learn it from each other as well, not just from those people teaching them in a formal atmosphere, but those people that they're seeing walking on the pathways of the campuses, from the people that look interesting to them, but they don't know how to say hello, or they don't feel as if they have enough in common. So this brings people together. And as for the hope, I do still have hope for this country. I do still have hope for freedom. People have given their lives, Sam, to preserve that very concept. And I believe there are enough people who truly appreciate that and who are teaching that to their families.
So, James, college campuses are where you guys have decided to focus to help bring some of this education, to create this civil discourse. But I think Anne's right. It really manifests itself in the workplace, at the grocery store, at the restaurant, at the bowling alley, wherever people are, right?
Yes, and right. So, the story of More Like Us is a story of exploration of what sector works best. And we didn't know. We started with religious leaders. We looked at K-12 education. We looked at Hollywood. Right, the research is pretty, across the board. It's pretty symmetrical between Democrats and Republicans misunderstanding each other. And so, where can we kind of have our first foothold? And it turned out that higher ed is the best option, but we don't want to give another misperception that higher ed is the only place for this to be used. It's just the best option for us.
Well, it's a way to get to young people. It's a way to try to, in my opinion, kind of derate the hate, as a buddy of mine likes to say. It's a way to kind of back off a little bit and settle down and say, hey, let's lower the temperature and let's see if we can't, recognize each other as people that deserve respect and honor. And what have I left out that you want to mention? I can't cover everything in a 1 hour period, but about your organization, about what you guys do, how you do it, help people kind of understand what I've kind of overlooked. Anything?
You know, it's interesting because I have worked in nonpartisan, bipartisan, and also partisan sectors, you know, throughout the past 45 years and actually more. And upon really learning about what More Like Us was interested in accomplishing, at first I had to be sure about this. And I felt that, you know, upon speaking with James and Dane, learning more about them as grown-ups, it just impressed upon me that this is very much needed. And this is part of the hope for the future. And as James just said, and as you said as well, Sam, it's not just on the college campuses, but this is the perfect way to reach those people who are about to become leaders or, you know, significant participants in everyday life, and be able to show them that there is a lot in common, that there's a lot to share. And if they even don't agree with everything, someone's religion or somebody's political outlook or whatever it happens to be, particular views on particular issues, that is okay. That is all right. It's a bouncing off point. And because of that, and because of the work that we're doing, I have even more hope for the future of this country.
James, what have I overlooked?
Yeah, you covered a lot. I would just say, so how can people help, right? If we're so inspiring, I have no idea if that's the case, but if you are, you know, how can you contribute? And say on our website, you know, our emails are there, especially if you know any contacts at institutions of higher learning. So, right, especially any administrators, sometimes professors, just anyone who may be interested in civil discourse on any kind of higher ed campus. Well, we just won a grant to work on campuses with more right of center students who may align with some of the listeners of this show. So please feel free to reach out to us. We respond. We love to hear from people, and these contacts can really spread this message far.
And by the way, when you go to morelikeuss.org, there's ways to get involved. You can see what their initiatives are and what they're working on. If you go to their page, you can learn more about the credentials for James Cohen and Anne Schockett, because they have incredible credentials. I didn't really go into the details on those just because they've got a lot of credentials. They've been at this for a long time. The organization they've put together, the three founders, have really put something together in my mind that can really change the narrative and give people the skills necessary to lower the temperature in America. And that's what I'd like to see. I referred to this interview I did with this Brian Shapiro guy. And I mean, these people are attacking me relentlessly. And I think, you know what? They have every right to think what they want to think. This is America. But maybe they could consider who I am. I've been a talk show host for 30 plus years. You know what? I don't know everything, but I'm pretty grounded in the supreme law of our land, the Constitution, the rule of law. And agree or disagree with my opinions, they're well thought out and well supported. And it's something that I think people should really think about and consider. And that's really, and the reason I bring this up is not to focus on me, but to highlight, that's really what you guys are trying to do, is give people a little bit of grace. Final word to you, James, 30 seconds.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you, Sam, for having us on. It was wonderful meeting you at Braver Angels. And yes, please reach out so we can motivate civil discourse on college campuses around the country.
Anne Schockett, thank you so much. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you,
James.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sam. This has been a very positive show, and this is what we're all about, to bring out the positivity in people, to make them learn that they have the right to feel the way they do, but they also have the obligation to learn about how other people feel as well.
Amen to that. Morelikeuss.org is the website. Morelikeuss.org. God save our constitutional republic.